Learn.ba, the skills you need to perform at your peak BA capacity.
If you're a practicing business analyst who's working at a full-time permanent job right now and you're considering going freelance, this video is for you. And going freelance basically means that instead of having a full-time permanent job, what you do is you take on jobs on a contract basis that lasts a certain amount of time, and you have no employment relationship with the employer. So your employer is basically hiring you like a vendor instead of hiring you like an employee. And from an employer's perspective, there's a huge difference. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you some of the major benefits, but mostly I'm going to talk about the drawbacks, because I think that what happens to a lot of people, a lot of analysts who are working full-time, what happens to them is that they see the number, they'll see the hourly rate that a freelancer business analyst makes, and that starts to become the only decision that is going to drive whether they're going to become a freelancer as well. And so they only use pay, the hourly rate of a freelancer, as the determining factor of whether they should start freelancing or not. And there are that's a mistake, first of all, if that's what you're considering doing. And in this video, I think you should understand all of the hidden costs of what it means to be a freelancer. So the things that most people don't typically think about, number one is the stability of work. I know it occurs to you and you're probably thinking about it, but you might be overly distracted by the actual hourly rate of an analyst. So let's talk about the stability of work, because as a freelancer, you have no stability of work, right? As a full-time employee, you're a full-time employee and you're on the payroll, and you know you basically have a job, right? Barring, you know, any extenuating circumstances, you know, a company goes out of business or they run out of money, or, you know, they're having layoffs. Outside of those situations, as a full-time permanent employee, you know that you have a job indefinitely. As a freelancer, it's a totally different mindset, because you know that as soon as your contract date is up, you're very likely going to have to start the job search process all over again. And so as a freelancer, as a contractor, as a consultant, business analyst, you're constantly having to look for work. And so one of the things that you have to consider here is that finding work and doing interviews becomes part of your skill set. So not only now are you doing the analysis work, you're not only building up skills to do the actual work of an analyst, you now have to turn job search skills and interview skills and business development skills as a totally different skill set, right? As a full-time employee, that's like a one-time thing you would do, and that would probably last, you know, 5, 6, 7, 10, 20 years. As a freelancer, you do not have that. So you have to now take on the burden of having to learn an additional skill set on top of your business analysis skills that you're trying to pick up. So that's the first major drawback, or some people would see as a drawback, of being a freelancer. Let's talk about pay. All right. So when you look at an hourly rate of a business analyst and you try to convert your own full-time permanent salary into an hourly rate, you'll see that the freelancer's hourly rate is probably going to be close to double what you're making. And that might, if you're just looking at it at a surface level, that might lead you to believe that freelancers are really ending up with double the money that you're making. And that's totally not the case, because there are a lot of hidden financial costs of being a freelancer that a lot of people don't know about. And the biggest financial cost is the fact that you do not receive any kind of pension. You do not receive any kind of benefits when you're a freelancer, right? So as a full-time employee, most employers out there offer their employees things like a pension. So if you're contributing to your 401k in the US, or to your pension plan here in Canada, if you're contributing as part of your payroll, your employer will also contribute to that. And so they're giving you money for your retirement that is not showing up in your pay stubs. It's not showing up in your bank accounts when they pay you, right? But that's money that's going directly into your bank account. And that's one of the things that you don't have as a freelancer. If you have a family, if you have a significant other and you have children, a lot of employers will offer health benefits, right? In health insurance. And the insurance doesn't oftentimes cover just you, but it covers you and all of your family. So it'll cover your significant other. It will oftentimes cover your children. And that is, again, another thing that as a freelancer, you just don't have. You have to take the money out of the pay that you're making, and you have to purchase your own health insurance. Life insurance is another one, right? Do you have life insurance? That's another thing that you basically got to think about, that as a full-time employee you wouldn't have to think about, because it's just oftentimes it's just there for you, right? When it comes to retirement savings, the thing that there's another skill set that you have to learn if you want to be a freelancer, right? Because as a full-time employee, what your employer does is they hire an investment company to manage your pension plan for you, right? So when you're contributing to your pension as part of every pay stub or every time you get paid, that goes into a fund, and your company, your employer, has hired another investment company to manage that money, right? That's a cost that the employer has to pay. That's a cost that you don't have to worry about. As a freelancer, you have to bear that additional cost. So either you have to go and find yourself a really good financial advisor to help manage your pension for you, which is going to cost you money, or actually, in addition to that, you have to learn how investments work. So you have to learn about the different types of funds. You have to learn about, how much risk are you willing to take, how much financial risk are you willing to take with your retirement plan, because your financial advisor is going to work with you to try to help you figure out what your retirement's going to look like. You take on that entire burden of the knowledge and the costs and everything else that goes along with managing all of the stuff that is covered for you by your employer in a lot of cases. And so as a freelancer, you're taking on that extra burden. As a full-time employee, you're probably not even thinking about it. It's all just happening in the background, and you're focusing strictly on your work, right? So that's another hidden cost. The third one is something I like to refer to as just basic life support. As a freelancer, you have zero life support from your employer, right? You have zero life support from the government. So if you become unemployed, for example, if you go through a long stretch and you're not able to find a contract to do any kind of work, you're not eligible. In Canada and in the United States, as far as I know, you're not eligible for employment insurance if you are a freelancer. You have to be a full-time permanent employee who has lost their job as no fault of their own to be able to be eligible for employment insurance. And so when you're taking that, when you're getting double the rate, right, as a freelancer, it's not like that, that all that extra money is just extra money for you. You have to set aside the large portion of that to mitigate the risks of you not being able to find work for extended periods of time, right? And so the financial benefits of becoming a freelancer start to melt away when you start to take into consideration all of the hidden costs and all of the extra work that you have to do to maintain the same life, the same quality of life as a full-time employee. Once you factor all of that in, the freelancer rate doesn't look as attractive anymore, right? So if you're at the point in your BA career where you're trying to decide, should I become a freelancer for the extra money, take all of those points into consideration. Number one, job stability. Are you good at finding work? If not, freelancing might not be the right option for you. Number two, pay. It's not as attractive as it might seem on the surface. And number three, if you have the life support from your employer, and some employers do a really good job of this, is that they are very forgiving. If you're sick, you just call in sick. You have a number of sick days. As a freelancer, you don't have that benefit. If you're sick, you don't get paid for that day, right? So take all that into consideration and make a very wise decision. If you have any questions about this, you can ask me. You can just put it in the comments, and I'll try to answer the questions for you. But if you're at this point, make the very calculated decision for yourself to make sure that you've taken your family into consideration. You've taken all of the hidden costs into consideration when you're making this decision.